In Australia, we don't dream of a white Christmas. We dream of surviving a red one. Red dust, red sunburns, and if you're not careful, red blood on the dry earth. You've heard of drop bears, right? Those nasty little legends that tourists think are a joke. Koalas with a taste for flesh that drop from the gum trees to rip your throat out. We tell the Yanks that story to scare them, usually over a cold beer while the barbecue sizzles. But I'm here to tell you that on Christmas Eve, in the deep bush, you shouldn't be looking for Santa's sleigh in the sky. You should be watching for branches. I grew up in Richmond, Queensland, a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere when I was 18. My girlfriend Emily and I, along with our third wheel, Eric, decided to skip the family roast. We told our parents we were staying at Eric's place, but really, we loaded up his beat-up Ford Falcon and headed into the scrub for a secret Christmas camping trip. We found a spot deep in the ghost gums. It was beautiful. The Milky Way looked like tinsel strung across the universe. We drank Bundy rum, ate tin sausages, and laughed until our ribs hurt. Eric was the class clown. The guy had a grin that took up half his face. Goofy, infectious, and impossible to hate. As we sat by the fire, toasting the holiday, he started trying to spook Emily. "Better watch out, Em," he teased, pointing his beer at the canopy of paper bark trees above us. "Santa ain't the only thing coming out from above tonight. Drop bears get hungry this time of year." "Shut up, Eric," I laughed. "Don't listen to him, babe. Drop bears are a myth." "Are they?" Eric grinned, his teeth flashing in the firelight. Big sharp teeth. They drop down, latch onto your head, and slurp you like the Christmas pudding. We laughed it off. We put out the fire and crawled into our swags, those canvas bedrolls that are basically coffins you sleep in. Emily and I zipped ours up together. Eric was about 20 feet away in his own. I fell asleep to the sound of cicadas singing Silent Night. I woke up to the sound of creaking. It wasn't the wind. The air was dead still. It was the sound of heavy weight shifting on the branch directly above us. Emily was awake, trembling against my chest. "Is that Santa?" she whispered, half joking, half terrified. "Shh," I hissed. It wasn't Santa. Reindeer have hooves. This thing had claws. I could hear them scratching against the bark. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Then silence. And then the zipper of Eric's swag opened. We heard Eric yawn. We heard him step out into the dirt. Maybe we needed to pee. Maybe he heard the noise too. "What the fuck?" His voice was cut off by a wet, heavy thud. It wasn't a scream. It was worse. It was a muffled, wet struggle, like a snake constricting a rat. There was a sickening slurping sound, gurgling, and the sound of meat being vacuumed off the bone. Emily tried to scream, but I clamped my hand over her mouth. We lay there in the dark, sweating in the summer heat, listening to our best friend being consumed. Then silence again. We lay there for hours. The sun came up, baking us inside the canvas. We were too terrified to move. Around noon we heard it. Drag, flop, drag, flop. Something heavy was pulling itself away from the camp. It splashed into the river, and then the sound that haunts my nightmares. It sounded like a massive, wet burp, a regurgitation, that sound of something vomiting up a meal it couldn't quite digest. It went on for minutes, wet, chunky, violent, and footsteps running away into the bush. When we finally crawled out, Eric was gone. No blood, no body, just his empty swag and a flattened patch of grass. We told the police he wandered off. We told them he got lost. They searched for weaves, but the bush swallowed its people whole out here. We tried to move on. Emily and I got married, bought a house on the edge of town, and tried to forget that Christmas. But I couldn't let it go. I spoke to an indigenous elder I knew, a man named Eddie. I asked him about drop bears. He didn't laugh. He told me about the Yaramayahu, not a bear, mate. Eddie said his eyes dark. This little red man lives in the fig trees. It doesn't just kill you, it swallows you whole. drinks your essence, and then he paused. Then it spits you back up. But you don't come back as a man. You come back smaller, redder. You come back as one of them. I tried to write it off as folklore until this week. It's Christmas again. The heat is rising. The cicadas are screaming. Last night, Emily and I were decorating the tree. We heard a noise outside, a heavy creaking on the branch of the gum tree right outside our second-story window. I turned off the lights and looked out. There was something perched in the tree. It was short. It was thick. Its skin was the color of a sunburn. It was staring right at me through the glass. It wasn't a monster, not entirely. It raised a hand and tapped on the glass. It smiled. It wasn't a predator's snarl. It was a wide, goofy ear-to-ear grin, the same grin I haven't seen in 20 years. Eric is back for Christmas, and I think he's hungry. They say Christmas is the season of giving, but for us, it was the season of owing. I'm cloudy-heart, and I decided this year we weren't going to cry about our maxed-out credit cards or the foreclosure notices stuffed in our stockings. No, we were going to celebrate them. I threw the ultimate in the red Christmas bash, a sanctuary for the destitute, a festive gala for those of us who knew that the only thing silent about our nights was the phone after we blocked with debt collectors. The venue was my drafty apartment, decked out in garland, made of unpaid bills and eviction warnings painted gold. We had a tree, sure, but the ornaments for repossessed car keys and cut-up credit cards. The vibe was electric, manic, really. There's a specific kind of hysteria that comes with owing more money than you could make in 10 lifetimes. It's a freedom. When you fall that far, you know it hit the ground. You just keep falling and eventually learn to fly. Everyone was there. Hundreds of people, laughing, drinking, cheap wine out plastic cups, toasting to financial ruin. It was beautiful. We were a tribe, a legion of the broke. Jeremy was my right-hand man. He was in charge of the refreshments, specifically the hot chocolate station. It was meant to be the centerpiece, a tower of cocoa to warm our frozen improvised hearts. But Jeremy isn't quite right. Early in the evening, I went into the kitchen to check on supplies. Jeremy was standing by the chest freezer, a strange, proud grin plastered on his face. "We need more cocoa, Jeremy," I said. "The waiter's not even on the stove." "Don't worry, Cloudy," he said, tapping his temple. "I planned ahead. I boiled the water last night." I stared at him. "You what?" "I boiled it yesterday," he explained, as if speaking to a child. "And then I put it in the freezer to save time. That way, you don't have to wait for it to boil tonight. We just take it out." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. A stupid, Jeremy kind of joke. You can't freeze boiling water and expect it to stay hot. That's not how the universe works. That's not how anything works. But then, he opened the freezer. A cloud of steam rolled out, thick and white, fogging up the kitchen windows. My stomach dropped. I watched paralyzed as Jeremy reached into the frost, crushed the chest freezer, and pulled out a metal pot. The water inside was bubbling, rolling, violent angry bubbles popping on the surface. It'd been in deep freeze for 15 hours. "See?" Jeremy chirped, pouring the impossible, scalding water into a jug of cocoa powder. Saved time. I looked around the kitchen. Guests were drifting in, holding out their mugs. They didn't scream. They didn't question why steam was coming from the freezer. They just took the cocoa, laughing about their student loans, sipping the physics, defying brew. That was the first sign that our little party had slipped off the edge of the world. The second sign was the smell. At first, I thought it was just the trash, or maybe someone had brought a cheap, funky cheese. But as the night wore on, cutting through the scent of peppermint and pine, a heavy, cloying sweetness began to fill the air. I smelled like wet earth and spoiled meat. It was getting hard to breathe. I cornered Jerry near the punch bowl. "Jeremy," I hissed. "What is that smell? Did the fridge die?" Jeremy smiled, faltered. His eyes darted around the room, landing on the singing crowd. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of peppermint and secret. "I have a confession, darling," he whispered. "It's about John." John was our other organizer. He was supposed to be running the music, but I hadn't seen him all night. "Where is he?" I asked. "John was a traitor," Jeremy spat, his voice trembling with rage. "He didn't belong here, Cloudy. I found his bank statement. He paid it off. All of it. He was debt-free. He had a positive net worth." I gasped. The betrayal stung worse than the smell. This party was for us, the damned. But John to boom here, solvent and secure. It was hypocrisy. It was a mockery of our suffering. "So," Jeremy continued, wringing his hands, "I fixed it. I put him in the timeout box." "The timeout box?" "The freezer," Jeremy said, "with the water." My blood ran cold, even as the room sweltered. "Jeremy, you put John in the freezer?" "I had to kill him, Cloudy," Jeremy insisted, his voice rising. "He was ruining the vibe. I put him in there this morning, I thought. I thought the cold would keep him fresh until the party was over." I looked at the freezer, the same freezer where the water had stayed boiling for 15 hours. Dread, heavy and cold, settled in my gut. If the freezer didn't cool the water, I walked to the chest. The crowd parted for me, still cheering, still raising their mugs of hot chocolate high. "Here's to never paying it back," they screamed. I lifted the lid, steam billowed out again. This time, it carried the stench of the grave. The water pot was there, still bubbling away, and next to it, squeezed into the compartment, was John. But he wasn't frozen. He wasn't even fresh. In the span of 12 hours, inside a box that should have been 0 degrees, John had melted. He was a slurry of decay. Accelerated rot that usually takes a week in the jungle heat had happened in hours inside the icebox. The freezer didn't preserve. It consumed. It was a kiln of entropy. I stared at the boiling water. I stared at what was left of John. I looked back at Jeremy. He was smiling, handing a fresh cup of cocoa to a laughing woman. She took a sip, moaning in delight at the warmth. "It saves so much time," Jeremy whispered to me, winking. I looked at my guests, my beautiful, broken, indebted friends. They were drinking the impossible. They were breathing in the decay of the solvent man. And they were happy. They were so happy. Who was I to ruin Christmas? I gently lowered the lid of the freezer, trapping the steam and the rot inside. I picked up a mug. "To debt!" I screamed, my voice cracking. "To debt!" They roared back. I took a sip. It burned my tongue. It tasted like chocolate and iron, and the end of the world. "Merry Christmas! We're never leaving this party." It was Christmas Eve and I was broke. Not just skip the latte broke. I'm talking ramen noodles for Christmas dinner and praying the heat stays on. Broke. The twinkling lights of the neighborhood felt mocking. Every carol on the radio sounded like a taunt. I was about to turn in for a miserable night when there was a knock at the door. 2 figures stood on my snow-dusted porch. They weren't carolers. They wore heavy, velvet robes the color of dried blood and deep evergreen, trimmed with fur that looked distressingly like matted wolf hair. Their hoods cast shadows so deep their faces were voids. They looked like wise men who had taken a very wrong turn. Before I could ask what they were selling, one of them spoke. His voice sounded like grinding stones under ice. "Do you want to be damned?" he asked. I blinked. "Merry Christmas to you all too, pal. I'm already pretty down if you look at my bank account." They didn't laugh. The first figure reached into his robe and pulled out a thick red envelope sealed with black wax. He held it out. I took it. It was heavy, and I broke the seal. Inside wasn't a Christmas card, but cash. A staggering amount of $100 bills. Real. Crisp. Enough to save my Christmas, my year, my life. "This," the robe said, "is a mere stocking stuffer. 1/10 of what you receive if you're damned tonight." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Greed is a powerful spirit, stronger than the Christmas ghost. Where do I sign? Do I have to sit on Krampus's lap? There is no catch, the other one said, his voice a dry rustle. Come to our chapel, an hour of your time on this holy night. Receive your gift, be damned. They handed me a card with an address and vanished into the swirling snow like smoke. I went, of course, I went. The address led to a part of town where the street lights didn't work. The building was a squat, windowless block of black stone, topped with a steeple that looked uncomfortably like a charred bone pointing accusingly at the sky. Inside, it was freezing. The air smelled of burnt pine needles, spoiled gingerbread, and an ancient dust. There were no cheerful decorations, instead garlands made of blackened thorns hung from the ceiling. The only light came from a candelabras holding tapers that burned with cold, blue flames. A figure waited for me. He gestured to the center of the vast, empty room. There sat a chair, rough-hewn from black rock, looking less like furniture and more like a sacrificial altar. Sit, the cultist commanded. Face forward. Do not look behind you until the bells toll. I sat the stone, sucked the warmth right through my winter coat. Behind me, I heard a heavy iron door creak. A draft hit my neck, colder than any winter wind outside. It carried ash, fine, grey flakes that began to swirl around me like a molded snow globe. Then the carols began. They started as whispers behind me, thousands of voices singing, Silent Night. But wrong, the melody was twisted, dissonant, sung in guttural tones that grated against my soul. Sleep in heavenly peace, they hissed, sounding like anything but peace. The ash grew thicker, choking the blue candlelight. I wanted to run, but the thought of that money, that beautiful, life-changing money, glued me to the stone. Something touched my shoulder, a hand, impossibly cold, heavy as lead. It rested as the discordant choir reached a never pitch of screaming whispers. Then silence. The iron door slammed shut behind me. The candles flared back to life. The cultist stood before me, holding a large leather briefcase. It is finished, he said. Merry Christmas. You are damned. He handed me the case. I popped the latches. It was packed with cash. My salvation. I fled that place. The loot clutched to my chest like the baby Jesus. I drove home high on adrenaline and avarice. I quit my job the next day. Best Christmas ever. It took until New Year's for the real gift to unwrap itself. I was walking through the post-holiday sales crowd. I bumped into a Salvation Army bell ringer by a red kettle. Sorry, I muttered, turning to drop a coin in the bucket. The bell ringer turned, whereas I should have been. It was only smooth, pale skin, no sockets, no brows, just flesh. I recoiled, stumbling back. I looked around frantically. A woman walked past me, carrying shopping bags. She had no nose, just a flat plane of skin above a smiling mouth. Her round home barricaded the door. I told myself it was stress, a hallucination. But it got worse. The eyes weren't just missing anymore. Sometimes they were replaced. I saw a mole Santa taking his smoke break in the alley. When he looked at me, his eyes were shining lumps of coal, burning with malice. Then came the mouths. I was in the grocery store, trying to buy food without looking at anyone. The cashier asked me for my reward card. I made the mistake of looking up. His jaw didn't open downwards. It split vertically, from his chin to his nose, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth like an Iron Maiden. Price or God, his vertical maw chittered at me. I screamed and abandoned my cart. Now I hide in my expensive house, got with damn money. The carols have stopped, but the whispers remain in the corners of the room. This morning, I finally worked up the courage to look in the mirror. I needed to see it was still me. I looked. I saw my eyes, thank God. I still had eyes. But then a sob ripped its way out on my throat as I cried out. My face split open. Not only the mouth, a vertical gash line with razors stared back at me in the glass. I am one of one now. A few minutes ago, the doorbell rang. No one was there. Just the small, rat present on the mug. I opened it. Inside was a lump coal and a card made of bird. It had 3 words carved into it. We're waiting, Santa.